Gaming creators, will one game or multiple games grow your channel faster? Should you make content only about one game and shoot up to the top, or go multiple games to kind of spread risk, to look at multiple opportunities? That's what this episode is all about. We're going to cover what your best options are on YouTube with live streaming, and we've got a couple surprises for you here in the episode, secret tips that we've used to become full-time gamers. Welcome to The Digital Drop. This is the #1 podcast for gaming creators where we help you make gaming content full-time. My name is Andrew Wall, aka AWall, but you can call me Mr. Digital, I guess. And I'm also joined by Andrew Perrin. What's up, Perrin?
Mr. Digital. I want to make that name catch on for you. I like it. I think we should keep that going. Also, I'm doing well. Thanks for
Having multiple names is super confusing. Ross A. Dillon, who only has one name, founder of VGF Gamers, the biggest Twitter account for gaming ever. What's up, buddy?
Ever. Don't forget it. I'm doing awesome. Glad to be here. Excited for this one. This is one that we've been talking about for a while. Ready to pound it out.
Exactly. I message with so many creators on Discord asking me which game should I cover, and often they talk about which game should I expand to next. I'm kind of stuck with my current game. What do I do? We have answers to all of these questions. I've helped creators make those transitions and grow their views tenfold by focusing on one thing in particular and then diversifying at the right times. This episode is sponsored by Rode microphones, and all of the vocals you hear during this episode have no extra post-production effects or enhancements. So if you're a creator that just wants to sound exactly this good out the box, then what we're using right now are Rode Procaster microphones and Rodecaster mixers, and we just turn the onboard processing on. I've recommended to my boss, multiple media companies and clients, multiple creators. They're all using this equipment. I've launched podcasts with big creators recently with this equipment. It's just freaking great. So if you think we sound good and you're shopping for some new gear, go to our website, propodcastinggear.com. You can download or just view our free guide that has our recommended audio equipment. We're not collecting your email, your credit card. There's no marketing BS. We're just recommending gear to you for free to help you do what you love for a living. Go to our site, propodcastinggear.com. Download that free guide right now. Thank you, Rode Microphones. So back to the point at hand. Will one game or multiple games grow your channel faster? Let's kick it over to game show host Ross A. Dillon.
Oh, I like that title. I'm going to stick with that. Welcome into whatever game show we're doing today. The rules are very simple. We each have 2 minutes to answer the question. If you go over 2 minutes, you hear the buzzard, and that means you stop and you automatically lose the points. One game or multiple games? Which one do you guys prefer? Mr. Digital, Mr. AWOL? We're about to find out. And also, which one is going to be the most beneficial to you? Sticking with one, going to multiple? We're starting right now with YouTube. Mr. Digital, you are on the clock. Let's talk about doing one game on YouTube in 3, 2, 1.
Everybody starts out doing one game on YouTube that makes it eventually. And they do that one game and they start to grow with that game, and that becomes the foundation for their channel moving forward. Here's why. YouTube's algorithm is all about keeping viewers on the platform for as long as humanly possible. You guys know that. That's why you see things like average view duration being so huge with the new YouTube dashboard. They're emphasizing this for a reason. That's also why you see things like click-through rate being so emphasized in the dashboard with that little click funnel thing they show you now, because they want people to click more and more videos and stay on YouTube for as long as possible. Why? So they can run more advertisements, obviously. So, by covering one game on your channel, especially when you're growing, you can build a subscriber base that enables notifications and will actually click your videos and then watch them when you release them during the growth period for your channel. If you're covering multiple games, which I'll talk about in a moment, then you're splitting your audience into smaller chunks, and that's making every subscriber that you acquire during the growth phase of your channel that much less valuable. If you cover one game, then 100% of your subscribers are interested in that game, and 100% of them are likely to click when they get that notification and when they see it in your feed. If you cover 3 games in contrast, when you're growing, then each subscriber is basically 33% as valuable as they would have been otherwise. So growing channels, starting channels, covering one game that is working for you and one game that is getting traction, that's the path to success. Virtually every full-time gaming creator I've coached and I've helped get to that finish line where it's paying their bills, it was one game that got them there on YouTube, and that ends up being a foundational game for them in the long run.
You know what? That's actually really impressive, seeing as you're not even looking at a clock. That was right at 2 minutes on the dot. Well played. Quick question. What was the first game that you focused on YouTube, AWOL?
I started on YouTube covering StarCraft 2, the first StarCraft 2, Wings of Liberty, because I saw Husky StarCraft. This was in 2010 or 2009 maybe. I saw Husky StarCraft creating gaming videos where he was just doing commentary on top of StarCraft 2 replays, and I thought to myself, I can do that better. And so I started doing StarCraft 2 esports casts, eventually the ESL, which was much smaller and less significant at that time, ended up bringing me on board to host some of their VODs for StarCraft 2. And then I created a offshoot series from that for StarCraft 2 on YouTube called Trollcasts. And we were the first ones to do silly esports casts, esports style casts of replays where people were doing like probe rushes and tower rushes and stuff. And then everybody else ended up copying the idea and doing it themselves. So it was StarCraft 2 for me in the beginning. And in the early days of YouTube, it ended up growing that first channel I did, FTW Broadcasting, to like 9,000 subscribers. And I got about 250,000 or so views off of StarCraft 2. And back in 2010, that wasn't too bad.
Perrin, you're up. You got 2 minutes on the clock. Why should people only play one game on YouTube?
I'm going to tackle this from the community manager perspective, especially from in the gaming industry. It's the age-old way that we build communities around gaming topics is our shared interests for a single game. It's the simplest, most understandable form of community building and reasoning as to why you're all there. So if you cover one game on YouTube and you're able to stick with one game on YouTube, your community is all people who are there of that mutually shared interest of that one particular game. Despite whatever else you may have themed your channel on, whatever special things that you do as a creator on your channel that other people might be there for too, you always have this universal kind of agreed upon, but not necessarily overtly stated reasoning that everyone is there. And it's because you all shared enjoyment for this one particular thing. If you change that up, you kind of ruin that dynamic and you alienate all the people who are there for that reason and that reason alone, which can hurt your consistent growth if you're trying to build up concurrency, you're trying to build up more views per video, even without looking at the YouTube algorithm, just understanding how people work and how gamers work. That's just not going to be in your best interest to swap around off of just that single game, because let's say you built up an audience around, let's just say StarCraft 2, since AWOL was talking about it, and everybody there is there for StarCraft 2. Suddenly you swap to something totally different. Let's just say Minecraft. And everybody who was there previously for StarCraft 2 is now frustrated, and they've now been hit with the notion that, when I come here, I might not be seeing StarCraft 2 anymore. And I need to maybe find somewhere else where I can go daily to get my StarCraft 2 community and to engage with creators around that area. So they might go shop for somebody else, and you can lose them permanently. So it's very, very important to stick with that one game, because it can be the core of why all other gamers are there at your channel. And to let go of that, you would have to have a lot of other criteria in place as a creator first.
Wow, very good. Same question as I asked Mr. Digital. What was the first game that you focused on YouTube?
Star Wars: The Old Republic. And I think I've talked about that other podcasts, but I didn't really start gaming on YouTube until quite late. That was probably 2010 or so, I guess. And I built a fan site around the game, and the fan site led me into also producing some content on YouTube. Since I was running marketing for that fan site, I did the socials, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube was a component there.
Streaming one game or multiple games, which one should you focus on? Which one's better? In your guys' experience, which one would you recommend? Let's start with streaming one game. Streaming on sites like Twitch, Mixer, whatever. One game. Mr. Digital, 3, 2, 1.
Streaming one game, in my opinion, is dramatic pause. Audience goes, dead. So I think that streaming one game doesn't make sense for about 90% or so of creators, maybe more. So here's why. People don't watch live streams anymore for the game itself. Now, there are some exceptions. If you have insane skills with a game, if you are a staple of that community and you've built already a large audience for a particular community, then yes, that's an exception. You need to stream that particular game for that particular community for the reasons that Ashwell just talked about a moment ago, where you are a staple personality there, and you need to continue to foster that community to build your business. But outside of those fringe cases, which the vast majority of you guys listening to this right now are not going to fall into those categories, people are not watching your live stream for a particular game. Ultimately, they aren't going to stick around for a particular game. They're going to stick around for you. The vast majority of people that watch live streams watch the stream because they want companionship. They watch the live stream because on some level they're lonely and they want friends, to be perfectly honest. That's why most people watch live streams. That's why they turn it on their phone, on their second monitor, on their computer, and why they come back day to day to hang out and chat and to hang out with you is because they want friends. They want online friends, and they aren't getting that need satisfied in real life or through other avenues. Is that unhealthy? No, I'm not saying it's unhealthy at all. I'm one of those people. I lay in bed at night and watch live streamers because I like it. So you need to satisfy that and realize that that's why you're streaming. That's what your audience wants. They want you and they want companionship. So covering one game is really not a huge factor for that, in my opinion, for the majority of creators. It should be more about taking breaks. It should be less about playing the game nonstop and grinding the game super, super hard, and more about just spending time talking to your audience. Final point here, fastest growing category on Twitch is just chatting. It's not any games. And it's just people talking to their camera because other people want companionship. That's the way the market's going, and you need to adjust your streaming strategy accordingly.
Wow, that was impressive. We don't have a hot take sound effect. That was a hot take where you proved it back with statistics and then went into the psychological aspect of it. I loved it. That was very impressive.
Here's your sound effect. This is a throwback to everybody who's
Let's
over
hear
the
it.
age of 30. Smoking.
Okay.
Jim Carrey, please don't sue us.
Mr. Perrin, you are up on streaming. What's the argument for only streaming one game versus multiple? In 3, 2, 1.
I'm gonna have to go with streaming multiple on Twitch. So I do think you go to Twitch streams because of a game, but that's only one criteria. And those, for us viewers or for other Twitch viewers, the reasoning that they're going to these different creators, starting with the game alone, but they're also seeking more things, as Awell stated, like community, someone to talk to about the game, and they're expecting more. They're expecting more now because these platforms have been around, especially live streaming has been around more. And they can go to any other streamer and get someone streaming a game. But they're looking for a sense of community, a sense of entertainment, something to make them laugh, something to make them, to teach them about the game more, to keep them up to date about what's going on in the game whenever they can't play, when they're at work or when they're otherwise, busy. So if you're not providing all of these other things and you're just reliant on covering one game to keep you built up, you're not going to be successful. You have to have that extra X factor, that thing that you uniquely bring to the table. You can do that with one game, but arguably if you're going to do that for a long period of time, I think it'd be far more beneficial to spread out your game topics over multiple games over time, because then you're getting that effect of new audience members coming in, interested in the game, but looking for more, and you're offering that more. So bring that X factor that you have to multiple different games to pick up multiple different audiences and wrap them into the unique value that you provide to your community as a creator. That way you've got a multi-game audience. And I feel like this is the ultimate goal for Twitch and for gaming live streamers, is to be able to cover whatever game you want to play and have tons of people want to watch you no matter what you're going to play, because you bring those extra important things to the table that everybody is actually there for at the end of the day, and to where you almost even end up driving people's game choices off of what you pick because they love watching you that much.
Hey, well, let's do this presidential style. Do you want 30 seconds to rebuttal?
No. I mean, everything he said is right. I don't. There was no. This wasn't really a debate. Like, we're both right.
No, I know. Let's jump back up to YouTube for a moment. Is there an argument for covering multiple games on that platform? Well, we'll start with you. You've got 2 minutes, starting in 3, 2, 1.
2 minutes will maybe be enough. Okay, there's a lot to say about this.
Go as long as you need.
Okay, so you can cover multiple games on YouTube on one channel if you're able to create a format to do so. The only formats that work that I've seen are list videos that are easy to consume, where the list video itself becomes the product that people come back for over and over again. So look at channels like TGN in the past, like Game Ranks, where you're saying, top 10 FPS games upcoming in 2020, or top 10 insert other thing controllers in 2020, et cetera, et cetera. And the lists themselves make the information so consumable that you can cover multiple games, you can cover hardware, you can cover the industry, you can cover all sorts of topics because the list makes it easy to consume. Another format is news channels. There's a ton of channels that do this. Yang Yeah is a great example where it's just covering trending news, and that trending news is generally centered around 10 core topics. Those sorts of channels work. It's covering multiple games, but it's also covering the game developers and publishers, and that's all on one channel. Okay, those formats, news and top 10s, work on YouTube on one channel, but let me say this, they are insanely competitive. Breaking into that space is ridiculously difficult, so I wouldn't recommend it to growing creators, to be perfectly honest. So, how do you cover multiple games in an easier way on YouTube and actually break through? And the answer is the 80-20 rule. I've talked about this so many times. On your primary channel, you cover 80% the main game that's getting the most traction on that channel, and then 20% of the coverage on your channel are extra games related to that one that you're just testing out. Then, if you find an extra game that you're testing out that really starts to take off for you, don't cover it on that main channel. Make a second channel for that game and make a channel just about that particular game. Then on that channel, do 80% that game and then 20% extra games, etc. And that will allow you to diversify, where each YouTube channel that you have is focusing on one primary game, but has 20% of the content experimenting with other stuff. So you're constantly doubling down on what's working for you, but always looking for new opportunities in the future. That's how you cover multiple games on YouTube. Do not try to cover, let's say, 2 to 3 games on your channel in depth with guides, tutorials, and updates and news on 2 to 3 games. It's rare that that will work on YouTube unless those games have an insane amount of crossover. So, for example, if you're covering Call of Duty mobile game, and you're also covering whatever the most recent Call of Duty console game is, maybe there's tons of crossover there between those, and it makes sense. But there's going to be rare cases where that makes sense. It has to stay within the same franchise if you're going to cover multiple games on the same channel. I hope that makes things clear for you guys. Don't try to do 2 or 3 games on the main channel and then contact somebody like me and go, AWOL, I'm covering 3 games and only one of them gets traction. What should I do? The answer is dump the games that aren't getting traction. That's the answer.
He's just going to point you to this episode, by the way. That's all his response is going to be.
I am.
Just come listen to this.
I am.
He doesn't have time for that. Perrin, do you have anything to add to that? That was pretty spot on.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's definitely, I don't have anything I can support or argue with that by any means. But I do have a bit of a different kind of take here, and it might be some good advice for those of you who are potentially struggling with this dilemma or this decision. And take a step back, regardless of what platform you're a creator on here, and take a look at yourself as a gamer. And if you're struggling between, do I cover this game or do I not cover this game? First of all, look at the history of you covering whatever game whatever you've done so far, and analyze it and see what has worked and what hasn't. Also look at, are you playing something that's going to keep your interest and your passion long term? Does the game have enough depth? Or if it doesn't, can you approach it in ways that give it more depth? And can you do that in a way that you can sustain for the long term? Because if you're looking at this as a business, you need to be able to keep up the parts that are working for as long as possible. And if you're losing passion and you're losing interest, you are not going to be as engaging. You're not going to be as entertaining. You're not going to be as funny. And we're going to be able to tell as audience people watching you on screen. You might be able to act your way through it a little bit, but eventually we're going to be able to tell that you're not really interested anymore. You're kind of just going through the motions, and this has become work for you. If it's become work for you, it's become work for us to watch you. So the important takeaway here is to analyze what has worked and what has not, and look at or come up with a plan. If you don't think you can stay interested, but you really need to keep covering this one game, for example, because it's working, look at trying to approach covering that game differently in ways that will give it more depth. Come up with creative ideas for your content that interest you at tackling the game from a different perspective. For example, I've delved recently into a little bit of Star Citizen. I have not been making content about it, but this game does not have a ton of depth right now in terms of gameplay content because it's an alpha, and right now they're still working on a lot of tech around the game. But I get a lot of replay value out of trying to figure out every time the servers wipe, since it's an alpha, and every time I start fresh, which can be frustrating for a lot of people. I enjoy coming back and figuring out what is the fastest way for me to make money in space, going from 0 to as much as I possibly can as fast as possible. How do I do that in this game, and how do I solve that problem? You can take a simple 2D platformer and create tons of depth for it. Speedrunners have done this, and that's a great example too of how you can take something that doesn't have a lot of depth, that might be boring, but approaching it in a way that gives it more depth and allows you to stay interested for longer. So look at it and analyze it in terms of your passion, in terms of how you can stay interested if you're looking at a single game. If that's not possible, then definitely open up and look at maybe covering multiple games that can keep your interest and your passion.
We've got an entire episode with Jonathan Moxness. The episode starts with the title TGN, How to Grow 1 Million Subscribers, where John also talks a bit more about this. He grew that channel from 300K to like 1.3 million, and they've made something like 500 videos about Overwatch. Listen to that episode, and he will tell you about a lot of what Ashrel's saying on how to juice a game to get more interest out of it and more passion out of it, and all of the techniques he's used over time. I mean, how do you create 500 videos about a game and can keep waking up every day and still stay excited about it? John's got that advice for you. He's been doing this for years. He's literally a salaried employee in a company covering a game in this capacity.
I think it's also worth noting that your 80-20 rule, while it's not going to completely knock the problem of being burnt out off your shoulders, but that 20%, can give you a good ease too. So it'll put a good dent in it. Am I wrong?
If you always do it, then you're fine. Like, you will be fine. You always have something new that you're looking at. You always have some new horizon and some new project, some new systems to break apart, some new gameplay to keep your interest. Like, the way to stay interested in anything in life is to take your brain off of it. Like, that's the key. There's nothing in life, even your favorite thing in the world, if you do it all day long, you're gonna hate it. You have to take your mind off of it in some way. And if you're trying to be as productive as you can be with your time as a creator, and your time is limited, don't just rely on things like going to the bar or watching Netflix episodes or doing things that aren't going to be necessarily contributing to your success. Use that time instead to cover other games and to continue moving your career forward. It's about time allocation and finding ways to give your brain a break while still being productive. Look, if you have questions about your game, hit us up on Twitter @DigitalDropPod. Ask us our opinions. We're happy to get back to you on it. We all check that account every day. Thank you so much for listening to the Digital Drop Podcast, and we encourage you to subscribe on the podcasting platform of your choice so you don't miss our weekly episode. If there was one nugget of information that helped you. Subscribe. It could be the one thing that changes your trajectory. That next episode could be what helps you make that full-time dream happen. Good luck, creators, and use the 80-20 rule. Bye-bye.
Yeah.